Hello, I'm Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Goodine, pastor of Church on Wheels Spoken Word out of Deltona, Florida. And this is another edition of Bible Study 2025. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Thank you for not thinking it robbery to take time out of your busy schedule and join with us tonight. Thank you all for tuning in on the airways. Like us on YouTube at Pastor Jeffrey Goodine. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified if you see this on YouTube. They say hit, subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. They're supposed to do something to the algorithm. Whatever. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on our Facebook group page, Church on Wheels. Let the good news roll. On Facebook Live, Jeffrey Goodine. X, which is formerly Twitter, at Goodine Jeffrey. Instagram, Goodine Jeffrey. And Clubhouse, Church on Wheels Ministry. In the future, we're going to add a Zoom so that you'll be able to join in on Zoom. And I don't know if I'm going to open it up. I'll probably open it up to questions and things of that nature. But in the future, in the very near future, we're going to have it on Zoom. So get ready for that. We moving. At the speed of God, we're moving. So he said, now it's time for you to investigate this, so we're going to investigate that. Also, send me an email at pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. It's pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. I'll add you to the list, and you get a copy of the handout so you can follow along with us in Bible study. That's pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. I add you to the list, and you will get a copy of the handout so that you can follow along with us in Bible study. Tonight, we are continuing our journey into the book of John. Now, I want you to understand, and I'm going to remind you that the book of John speaks of the deity of Christ. It comes strictly toward the deity of Christ, his supreme being. You see very little genealogy if any, in this book. You see very little of his life, and in essence, day-to-day things of that nature. What really it focuses on is the deity of Jesus Christ. And so John is a little different from Matthew, Luke, and Mark. Matthew, Luke, and Mark, they are synoptic gospels. They do a synopsis of Jesus' life. But John looks at Jesus from his deity, from the human perspective, from his supreme being concept. And so that's what we are. That's what happens in the book of John. Well, tonight we're going to do John chapter 8, and there's a verse in John chapter 8, verse 12. And I'll be reading from the King James Version tonight. And we'll focus on one thing I want to say is that is verse 12. And I'm going to show you how we got to verse 12 from the beginning of John. Now, Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, because you will have the light that leads to life. Now, the title of this, I put the light of the world, and I put the brightest light that you can't see with your physical eyes. The brightest light you cannot see with your physical eyes. Now, I'm going to tell you this. This light is so bright, that nobody can see it. In our physical eyes, it's so bright that nobody can see it. But it's so dim. It's so dim that everybody can follow it. Everybody can follow it. It's so dim. He's the light of the world. But you have to change your perspective. You have to change your perspective. If you're talking physical, then headlights coming your way is bright. A flashlight shining in your eyes is bright. Or when you're asleep in the bed or laying down and somebody come in and turn the lights on in the room and it's bright. Well, we got a light that's brighter than that. The brightest light you can come up with, the brightest light that man can come up with cannot touch this light. You cannot touch this light. But this light, you cannot see with your physical eyes. You can't see it with your physical eyes. You have to change your perspective. And when you change your perspective from the spiritual, then the brightest light that man can come up with can't shine. The brightest light that man can come up with can't touch it. Can't touch it. So he is the light of the world. So to keep that in perspective, we got to understand that we must change the way we view Jesus. We must change the way we view the concept of this light. The concept of this light. Because, let's just look at it this way. There's a light that you can't see, but you must trust. I'm going to say that again. Here's a light that you can't see with your physical eyes, but you must trust. Because when you get on the path to righteousness, the path to eternal life, that's a dark path. Very dark. In fact, you don't even know which way to go. So he said, trust me. I'll guide you through the night. I'm the light. You trust me. And then if you follow him, he'll tell you, okay, you gotta, up here you gotta step 2 steps to the right. Well, you step 2 steps to the right. Well, you know, some of us gonna say, well, I know which way to go, and you step 2 steps to the left, and wham, you run right into a wall. Or you trip and fall. And then he look back at you and say, I told you. And then you know what? What do we say? I know I should have listened. I should have listened. I should have trusted that voice. Let me tell you, that voice is not going to lead you astray. Trust me. That voice and that light is not going to lead you astray. So tonight, John chapter 8, and I'll be reading from the King James Version tonight. John chapter 8, starting at verse 1. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives. Now, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down, and he taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now, think of this. Remember back in the previous chapters, in chapter 7, when Jesus made a fool of them. They got on him about healing on the Sabbath, and telling him, wait a minute, you do this on the Sabbath, so what's the difference? And so he brought their hypocrisy. See, he revealed their hypocrisy the same way he reveals our hypocrisy. That's why the people say the people that go to church, they're hypocrites. Well, you know what? You're a hypocrite too. So you might as well come on to church and try to be the lesser of a hypocrite than you already are. But you need help with that. You need Jesus' help with that. Because we are. You know how we hypocrites? We say one thing, we do another. We all do it. Nobody is immune from that. So we all do it. And people are watching you, especially if they know that you're in the church. If you're the pastor, if you're the deacon board, and if you're in the choir, and the whole thing. Whatever position is in the church, they're watching you. People inside the church are watching you. And so they're waiting until your hypocrisy shows up. Your hypocrisy rears its ugly head, and then they turn around and say, now see that? And the ones that don't go to church, they say, well, now see, that's why I don't go to church. And you know what I tell them? No, that's not why you don't go to church. No, that's not why. Because you can't blame going to church on me and my faults. So Jesus, the religious leaders wanted revenge on Jesus. He had exposed their hypocrisy and made them look foolish in front of a large crowd. They wanted to return the favor. They came up with a plan to embarrass him in a public setting. So, here they come. While he's at the temple. Now remember, he's in the temple teaching people. And then here they come, busted through the door and said, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. In other words, what shall we do? What are you going to do? You call yourself all high and mighty and whatever. You call yourself the Son of God, and then you call yourself this, you call yourself that. And so what are you going to do? So they caught the woman. Now in verse 5 they said, now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? Now here they go. Now they're trying to trip it. They're trying to see what Jesus is going to say. See, now Moses said according to the law, she should be stoned. According to the law. So you see, they're going by the law. Number one, they caught a woman who was having an adulterous affair and brought her to the temple where Jesus was teaching during the Jewish festival of shelters. They asked Jesus what he thought they should do with her. This was a trap. Under Jewish law, a person could be stoned to death for adultery. However, the law was rarely enforced. Now here it is. You see, their hypocrisy. That meant that some of them, even though they in the church, having an adulterous affair. Now listen.
Where's the other person?
Yeah, I'll be coming to that. Yeah. They only brought one. They're trying to trip him up. But look, even today, we hear about things happening in the church. The pastors and deacons, they get caught in an adulterous affair. So, the hypocrisy. So, now they come to Jesus and they said, now she was caught red-handed. The law says we should stone her. But what do you say, Jesus? What do you say, Jesus? This they said tempted him that they might have to accuse him. Now, here's the dilemma. If Jesus said let her go, he would be breaking Jewish law. If he said stone her to death, he would be breaking Roman law, because the Romans didn't allow Jews to carry out religious executions. So you see, Jesus was in a dilemma, because he had the Jewish law on this side and he had the Roman rule law on this side. So they came to him, so they probably knew that. So they came to the temple in front of everybody to ask this question. Now, let's not forget, they might say that, it takes two people now. As they say, it takes two to tango. But where's the other person? They didn't bring him. Probably was one of them. I don't know. I wasn't there. But they didn't bring the guy. Well, let me put this back. They didn't bring the other person. Okay. They
didn't specify.
Right. They didn't specify. And listen, I don't know. I wasn't there. So, they didn't bring the other person, but they brought her. So, they're trying to get Jesus. They put him in a bind, in essence. They put him in our physical bind. The physical bind is the Jewish law say stone her. The Roman law says you cannot carry out a religious execution. Because they based it on religious execution because of what? Because of the law. So Jesus in a bind per se, in the physical bind, and this is what they wanted. This is what they want. This is one of the good times, I guess, if you want to look at it like that. One of the best opportunities to test Jesus. Because remember Jesus said give Caesar what's Caesar's. So if it's the Roman law that they can't carry out a religious execution, then there would be no way to stone her, because that would be according to the Jewish law. But the Jewish law says stone her. So you see where they tried to catch Jesus. It's kind of, it's kind of like damned if you do and damned if you don't. It's a no-win situation as we would perceive it. From the physical perspective. From the physical perspective. That's why I said this light is so bright that you can't see it with your physical eyes. So the physical perspective, Jesus would be in a bind. Because if he say let her go, then they would say, see, I told you. See, you're not upholding the Jewish law. So you're a fake. You're a hypocrite. You're not upholding the Jewish law. And then, if he say stone her, then he got more trouble than you shake a stick at, because now you got the Romans coming at you. Because you ordered, because what they're going to say, I can guarantee you what they can say. We can almost guarantee you what they say. If they stone her, and when the Roman rule showed up, they'll say, he said it. He told us to do it. And they would blame Jesus. You know how it is. Come on. We blame the devil for a whole lot of things. And the devil back there going, no, I didn't tell, no, that wasn't me. No, Jesus, they did that on their own. They just blaming it on me. So you know what they would have done. So, here's the dilemma of Jesus. So, here's Jesus. Verse 6. Then they said, tempted him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. Now, the Bible doesn't say what he wrote on the ground. So let's not get into what we think he wrote on the ground. Let's not even go there. The Bible says he wrote on the ground, as if, in other words, he ignored them. You know how we ignore people?
Could have been writing down their names.
Right.
Make a list.
Yeah, or tell them, or writing down on the thing, telling them where to go. I'm just saying, Anyway.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, hypothetically, but So, they got him in a bind, and Jesus starts ignoring them. Now they're getting frustrated. Think about how frustrated they are because he's not going into their hands. He's not doing. See, they put him in a bind. They thought they did. That would force him to act in a physical perspective. In a physical perspective, he had the Jewish law on this side and he had the Roman rule law on this side. Physical perspective. He couldn't win in either way. Because if he said let her go, then they would get on him and call him a hypocrite and all of that because he didn't follow the Jewish law. And if he told him to stone her, then the Romans would come and say, who authorized this execution? And then everybody would have pointed at Jesus. So you see the position that he was in. So, here is the crux. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. Now, and again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Now look at those words. He came from a what? From a spiritual perspective. He didn't come from the physical. He came from the spiritual. He said, now, okay, now. All right. So, instead of passing judgment on the woman, Jesus turned the table on her accuser. Let the one who had never sinned throw the first stone. He who is not of sin, let him first cast a stone. And look, we take that and we kind of turn it around and change some words and put some words out here, but we're trying to get the same thing. He who is not of sin, cast the first stone. He who thinks he's holier than thou, cast the first stone. You think you so, you think you so righteous. You think you all that. So Jesus said, anybody in his group who have not sinned, cast the first stone. Now, look at verse 9. This is after he stooped down, verse 9. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience. Remember, we left the physical, now we into the spiritual. We left the physical, now we into the spiritual. And they were convicted by their own conscience. Why? Because he made them look at themselves. He made them look at themselves. See, he makes us look at ourselves. That's why I say a lot of people don't want to read the Bible. Because all you see in there is you. You don't see nobody else. You see you. And they don't want to go to church because they feel people are going to talk about them and look at them sideways. Let me tell you something. Everybody looking at you sideways and everybody talking about you, okay? So let's get that out the way. Whether you go to church or whether you at the grocery store, hey, you know what? Let me tell you something. Next time you go to the grocery store, and you're walking down the aisles, I want you to look and see who's looking at you sideways. They're looking at how you dress.
Especially at Walmart.
Right. I wasn't going there with that, but yeah. They're looking at how you dress. They're looking at your hair. You know, they're looking at you with your kids. They're looking at what you got in the cart. You know, everything that they can look at you sideways. Now, they don't say nothing to you. They may not, you know, but everybody looking at you sideways. So, being in church is no different. Being in church is no different. So you're not going to get out of that by not coming to church. Trust me. So, the accusers had sinned by hatching a plot in the first place. Now, think about this. Hatching a plot. Why they didn't bring the other person? So you see, they already was trying to come out some way to catch Jesus. So they just brought the woman.
He was probably with the group.
Yeah. And
it was his idea.
Yeah, the one that mentioned it, yeah.
That might have been a name that was put down on that.
Yeah, he probably wrote down, Jimmy, you know you should be out there too. You know, Abdul Quadruple X, you know, Mary Jose, whatever, you know. But they had already hatched the plan. The plan was to bring her out and test Jesus' deity. But they tested it from a physical perspective. See, when we talk about Jesus' deity, remember, we approach him in the spiritual, but he rewards us, he answers us in the physical. So when we approach him from the spiritual, which is how he approached them, they approached him from the physical, he approached them from the spiritual. And what it is, he that is without sin, let him first cast a stone. And they were convicted by their own conscience. See, now, got to understand this. Jesus really didn't convict them. He didn't condemn them. Remember, he didn't come to condemn. See, he didn't condemn them. He just asked them, if you free of sin, cast the first stone. So their own conscience made them look at how sinful and hypocritical their lives are. See, when we go to judge, we miss something. We missed casting the first stone. We missed, are you free of sin? See, we missed that. But when the voice comes to us and say, now you know, you do the same thing. When that voice comes to you and say, you know, you talking bad about them, but look at you. And when you come to that realization, then you shut up. And you don't say nothing else. You know why you say, you want to tell you why you don't say nothing else? Because then after you say, Lord Jesus, please forgive me. Jesus, please forgive me, my mind. And, you know, that's because you have now been, you have now into the spiritual of, if you free of sin, cast the first stone. Because your conscience convicted you. So you see, Jesus did not convict them. Their own conscience convict them. That wasn't the physical, that was the spiritual. Convicting them. Now, bringing the woman to him publicly to humiliate her and ignoring the man who had committed adultery with her. That's an assumption. That's what we're saying. They left the man out. My thing is, you bring both of them. Do you know, this is a side note, do you know that in some churches that if a young girl gets pregnant, do you know they only bring her before the church? Do you know they only bring her before the church? And proceed to humiliate her and you know, everything they will do, and then they want to cast out the church and all of that, you know what I'm saying? But they don't bring the guy. Why is that? Why is that? You know, that's something we need to think about in the church. When especially when our young girls, you know, it takes two to tango. You know, trust me, she did not have the immaculate conception. Trust me, okay? Let's just leave it like that.
It's once and done.
Yeah, she didn't do that. So, but they bring her to church and they stand her up in front of the church. They're already talking bad about her. But nobody's saying nothing about the guy. Why is that? Why is that? You know, talk about our hypocrisy. So they did, and here, they didn't even try to argue. Why? Why would you argue when you convicted your own self by your own conscience? Why would you argue with me? I mean, come on, y'all. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, congregating, anybody here. Why argue with me? When your hypocrisy is revealed. Why argue at me? That don't prove nothing. Or you might say, why did you bring that up? Well, you know, I don't know. You know, why bring up the guy need to be brought here too? Instead of just her. If you're going to talk about her, you need to talk about him too. But we don't. We don't. The church don't like that. They don't do that. They rather talk about her behind her back, looking at her sideways, and all of that. And the guy kind of, and the young man, the guy, he kind of, I don't know, escaped that. But she gets humiliated in front of the church. My thing is, both of them should be in front of the church. If you're going to do it at all, you know, if you're going to bring them in front of church. Now, if you don't bring them in front of the church, then and you start talking about them, look about it reveals your hypocrisy because, you know, you sinful too. You just ain't caught yet, as they say.
Or it can be a different sin. A lot of people focus on one sin, but in God's eyes, all of them.
Yeah, all of them are sins, and all of them have the equal weight. You know, all of them have the equal weight. So there's no one sin bigger than the other, but that's in our eyes. You know, I can fool around as long as they don't get pregnant. I'm okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Call it what you like. Now, look at what happened. It says, and they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. Now, everybody left. Because everybody was convicted of their own consciousness. See, Jesus made them see the spirituality of the situation. Not the physical of the situation, but the spiritual of the situation. The spiritual of the situation is that if you're free of sin, if you call yourself holier than thou, if your Bible floats by itself and turns the scripture all by itself, then you throw the first stone. There was none. Because everybody, its conscience reveals your hypocrisy. Everybody's conscience reveals their hypocrisy. So we have to get better. Said they didn't even try to argue with Jesus. Instead, they just slipped away one by one, defeated again. Now, look what the Bible says. After and when they were convicted of their own conscience, went out one by one, which means they didn't all run at the same time. Let me see. Put it this way. Somebody was looking to see what the other person was going to do. You know, we don't want to be the first one. We know we're going to leave, but we don't want it to look like it's on me.
I'm guilty.
Yeah, I'm guilty. I don't want to look at it like that. So they say it started with the elders. So when one of them left, then everybody else left too. They were saying probably to themselves, it wasn't my idea. You know, we shouldn't have done that. You know, whatever story they want to come up with. Whatever story they want to come up with, okay. Whatever they come up with. But they all left one by one. And after the last one, and when Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst, just Jesus and her. Now, let me ask you a question. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, Congregation, anybody hear me? What if it was just Jesus and you? What do you think he'll say? If it was just Jesus and you, what do you think he would say about your hypocritical life? What do you think he would say about your life? What do you think he would say? Now, I know we ain't got enough time in Bible study to go down that list. But I just want you to think about that for a moment. When Jesus had lifted, verse 10, when Jesus had lifted up himself, he saw none but the woman. So that means while he was riding on the ground, they got out of Dodge. The accusers got out of Dodge. See, when we start accusing people, we start revealing their hypocrisy, per se. And we talk bad about them and all of that. And then, when the Spirit convicts our consciousness, and then we leave, and it's just that person in Jesus. Ain't that what you wanted? Don't you think that's what they wanted? Jesus and her? Don't you think that was their plan? What are you going to do now, Jesus? But they were gone. They got what they wanted. They got exactly what they wanted. You got exactly what you wanted. You was bad-mouthing them to Jesus, but guess what? Guess what's left after you left? When the Spirit convicted you of your hypocrisy, you left. Now, that's Jesus and the person. Isn't that what you wanted when you were talking about him? You wanted Jesus to get at him. Wasn't that the plan? Well, you got what you wanted, but you weren't there because the Spirit convicted your conscience. And your conscience told you that I cannot be here in front of Jesus while I'm accusing her because of my hypocrisy. So I got to get out of Dodge and leave her with Jesus. Isn't that what you wanted from the beginning? This is what they wanted. They wanted Jesus and her. That's what they wanted. But they didn't get to see what was going on because they were convicted. Now, and here, verse 10. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? Well, what he's saying? Where are your accusers? Did anybody condemn you? Remember now. Look at what happened. They didn't condemn her because they could have done that through the Jewish law, but they didn't. They came to Jesus to try to trip Jesus up. You see the difference? They could have carried out the Jewish law themselves, but they didn't. So that means that what? They didn't condemn her. Because if they did, if they had condemned her, Jesus wouldn't have been nowhere around. But they brought her to Jesus, therefore they did not condemn her according to the law. If they were out to condemn her according to the law, they were out to trip up Jesus according to the law. So you see the difference? That's why Jesus said, hath no man condemned thee? In other words, ain't no accusers around, so who condemned you? Think about it. When you talking bad about somebody, and you talking about Jesus, you ought to do this, and Jesus, you ought to do that to them, and this, and they aren't doing that, and you looking at them sideways, and all of that, and then you get convicted in your conscience of your hypocrisy, and then you leave. And didn't you want them and Jesus together? Just them two? Well, if that's the case, then you didn't condemn this person. All you wanted to do is bring them before Jesus. So you see, Jesus asked, where are your accusers? And where's the man that condemned you? Where are those that condemned you? None. Because if they had condemned her, they could have stoned her according to the law. But they understood the law too. They understood the law that if they'd stoned her, then the Romans would have become involved and, the whole deal. But they didn't want to do that. That's why they didn't condemn her. They brought her to Jesus to try to get Jesus to trip up. Now, verse 11, she said, No man, Lord, no man condemned me. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. And what Jesus said, Neither do I condemn thee. So he asked her, well, where are your accusers? And where's the man that condemned you? And she said, None. None. So Jesus said, Neither do I. And he said, Go and sin no more. Isn't that what you wanted? You tried to condemn them, but you couldn't. Why? It's because your hypocrisy was revealed. And Jesus didn't do that. Your own conscience did that. Your own conscience did that. You wanted Jesus to condemn them. You wanted Jesus to condemn them, but you wanted Jesus just them to. And Jesus said, well, where are the accusers? Where are those that are accusing you? And you standing before Jesus said, none. None of them condemn me. He said, well, I'm not going to condemn you either. Go and sin no more. Go and sin no more. Then verse 12. Then Jesus spake again unto them. Remember, this is in the temple now. Remember, this is in the church, as we say. This is in the church. That's why this happened. In front of all the people. Then Jesus spake again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. Jesus resumed his teachings with an amazing claim. I am the light of the world. You see that in verse 12. His word has special significance during the festival of shelters. The Jewish people celebrated God's pillar of fire that gave light to the Israelites on their way to the promised land. Jesus wanted the people to understand that the same light that guided their ancestors centuries before was available to them. The light. See, the light, when they were in the desert, there was a cloud in the day to keep the sun off of them, and a pillar of fire at night so they could see to keep moving. That light, that was the light of God.